the everyday world is not data literate, right? We are in the industry because that's the industry we work in. But I would say 90% of people outside of our industry, they haven't got a clue. Whereas at Formula E, we're different, right? We have the speed element. And actually, as a car, we are not that much slower than F1, right?
Welcome to the Data and AI podcast, where we try to teach you 3 or 4 interesting new things about data and AI while you're driving to work. If you like our content, please follow us in YouTube and in Spotify. This will help us tremendously. My name is Vincent Spruit, and in daily life, I'm a data engineer career coach. We help data engineers to get better at their job, to also find out the things that they love and to move into the right direction. Today, we're going to talk about Formula E. I'm a huge Formula 1 fan, and therefore it's a big pleasure and honor to speak with our guest today. With me today is Matt Roberts, the Business Intelligence Director of Formula E. Welcome, Matt.
Thank you. Great to be here.
So first, let's address your camera. It's been you're in England. It's a little bit misty, it seems.
I don't know what on earth's gone wrong with the technology today, but unfortunately I have a slightly misty camera, so apologies. I'm not in the middle of like a desert of a sandstorm or something, but it's
not a cool story, but it's just the technology, and the sound is great, so that's fine. Matt, you have a big background in sports. Let's focus mostly on the last part, because you worked for amazing channels, ESPN, Sky, and Formula One in the last years, and now you're working at Formula E. Can you tell me a little bit about what you're doing?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I've been working in sort of research and data for around 21 years or so. Before that, I studied at Bath University in West of England. I did French and German and European politics, so nothing to do with research data, nothing to do with marketing or anything. So I kind of sort of fell into this industry, I guess, as a lot of people do. I mean, not a lot of us older ones probably have fallen into it because you didn't have the opportunities to study it back in the day. I probably spent the first 7 or 8 years of my kind of career research agencies. So I started at Millward Brown, then I worked in radio, in press, in the UK. But I always had 2 passions. One was sport. I used to play tennis quite seriously, and then I kind of quit tennis and became a big kind of runner. I've run quite a lot of marathons and half marathons, and still trying to this day in my 40s doing it. I keep getting injured now. It's the problem. I'm getting older. My joints aren't as strong as they once were.
You don't want to accept it. But you said you ran it under 3 hours. That's the accomplishment of a lifetime.
Yeah, no, I did a 2:57. I did once. I got so close on so many occasions to beat 3 hours for a marathon, and then one time I did 3 hours and 6 seconds, so I was 6 seconds short. And I was like crying on the finish line. It was
for me, 6 seconds is probably a lot.
Yeah, but in the world of motorsport, 6 seconds is a lot. But marathon running is like,
nothing.
Yeah, I could have done one quick sprint at the beginning, and I would have done it 6 seconds quicker. Yeah, so sport was always my passion. And obviously, my language background, the kind of multicultural, kind of international aspect was always interesting as well. So I wanted to work a bit more for an international business rather than just UK. I wanted to work a bit more in sport. And then a role came up at Eurosport. So I applied for a job at Eurosport, being like their research manager. So essentially managing all their TV viewing data, doing market research projects, et cetera, et cetera. And I got that role. And then since then, I've been in sport ever since. That was back in 2008. So about 15 years later, I've done very similar kind of research data roles at ESPN, who came into the UK and bought some Premier League rights. BT Sport, again, working on their Premier League rights. Sky Sports, who are the biggest sports channel in Europe, I think. Again, really understanding around subscribers. How do they grow sports subscribers? What content works? What content doesn't work? So lots of kind of strategic work there. I was telling you before we started recording that I essentially was out of the blue contacted by sort of someone who I worked with at ESPN many moons ago, who was kind of like my boss's boss's boss. And he just said, do you want to meet this week? I've got a job for you at F1 if you want it. And so, I became the research director for Formula One. The first ever time Formula One had ever had any research or data other than the data on the cars, which was very well advanced and very technologically advanced. But in terms of the business of Formula One, in terms of fandom, TV audience growth, understanding how data helps with sponsorship, revenue, blah, 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 all that kind of stuff, they'd never, ever invested in that side. So I was the first ever sort of research and data person at Formula One. I set up a team of 5 of us, and I was there till 2021. And then another opportunity came up over Formula E, where I am now. I kind of sensed Formula One was changing direction a little bit. They had a new CEO came in. He was a bit less data-y centric. So I got given the opportunity to come over Formula E. And again, as we spoke earlier, Formula E really needs to understand its fans, really needs to understand how it grows its business. And actually now I have a team of like 12 people, which is more than double the size of Formula One. Again, to your point of we need more of that work here to really help us as a business grow, but also be accountable for our sponsors because we're not as big as Formula One is.
Yeah, and understanding the clients or the customers, or in this case, the viewers, I think it's important for every sport. Do you see this as this job market where you're in? Is this something growing in general?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I think if you 5 years ago, there wouldn't have been many jobs like mine out there. There would have been only at the very big organizations, the Premier League, the NFL, the NBA, and none of the football clubs. Like the Premier League is the biggest football league in the world. None of the clubs had any insight team except for I think Man City and Liverpool, which shows in how good those teams are. Everyone else, they had nothing, right? They were using consultants or they were using agencies or they were using. And now, 5 years later, even 6 years later, they're all investing. All I see on LinkedIn is new roles: insight manager for Southampton, insight manager for Burnley FC, Wolves, all these clubs that are smaller clubs that 5-10 years ago, they would not have had anyone working in those roles. So it's definitely something that in Europe, and I think probably in Netherlands, it's probably similar, and in Spain and in Germany and France, it's definitely we've taken a bit longer than the US to catch on in this area. The US, they're much more advanced than us, right? You go to the US, all the NFL teams, they've already got 20, 30 people working in this area. The big leagues have got 20, 30 people working in this area. Whereas in Europe still, even though we are branching out, you still have like the Premier League has 2 people. NFL in Europe has 1 person. The football clubs will have 1 person in the UK or 2 people. They're really small.
So you have the biggest team of Europe.
I think we probably do have the biggest team in Europe. Yeah,
you have 7 people, I think, or
of a sports rights holder. I don't think any sports rights holder has 12 people.
Ah, wow.
Yeah.
So, but it seems so obvious because if you understand your client base better and you are able to make more money with it, you will be able to attract better sponsors and all that. But before we get into that, can you explain what is the difference between Formula E and Formula One? Because Formula One, of course, is known, I think, by everybody in the world. Formula E, a lot less.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it's very simply, we are like the electric version of F1. It's probably a very easy way to describe us. It's a very, very lazy way as well, because we are very different as well at the same time. And, we have a very different story, a very different narrative to F1. F1 was always about being technologically the quickest, and speed was key to the experience of F1. Whereas at Formula E, we're different, right? We have the speed element, and actually, as a car, we are not that much slower than F1, right? 200 miles an hour versus 210 miles an hour, I think, is the FE versus F1 maximum speed. But we have the kind of sustainability and social impact angle, which F1 doesn't have. And they're trying desperately to come into this space, but we own it. And we've owned it since we launched in 2014, right? We've been net zero since 2014. And back then, I think people kind of laughed and were like, who are these kind of eco warriors? And now you look at the world as it is now, and suddenly we are, owning that space is a really good place to be. It's helped us with sponsors. It helps us with our audience as well. So Formula E is both the youngest and the most female sport of all the global leagues. If you look at the fan demographic, so younger people care about the environment, and they care a lot more than older people do. If you look at kind of stereotypes and stats and values, so it's a real opportunity for us to prove that we are a diverse sport. We're younger, we're more female, which makes us again more attractive to sponsors, right? If you look at F1, you exclude the US, exclude Asia, and you look at just a European F1 fan, the average age is definitely over 50 years old. It's white, grey-haired men in their 50s watching, in another room away from their family. And that sounds stereotypical, me saying that, because you'll probably tell me that all of your 20-odd-year-old friends, they love F1. But if you look at the TV viewing numbers, you look at the fan numbers, you look at the data that I had access to for 4 years, this was the truth, right? In Italy, 55 is the average age of an F1 fan. So F1 is an aging sport in Europe, whereas FE is this great opportunity to own that younger space, and it helped by our story.
Yeah, I think, Netherlands is maybe not comparable to the rest of the world because we all follow Max Verstappen.
Yeah.
And we only became fans when he came in. But yeah, the rest of the world, I do think it was an older man sport for sure.
Yeah, definitely.
So the data we think about with Formula sports is the data in the car, which you already said that what you're on about is much more the business side of it, attracting more fans. Can you tell me what kind of data you guys are measuring? And because I saw you in the data event 2 weeks ago, you gave a brilliant speech about the kind of new things that you are using. I thought, wow, that's amazing. And that's also why I decided to invite you for this podcast. But can you tell me something about the data that you are using?
Yeah, it's a whole range of data and information. So the main one is probably TV audience data, really understanding, who's watching our sport. TV is the number one medium to watch our sport, right? So how people are, who's watching our sport, how many of them are watching, but also using that TV data for strategic questions. So if we moved our start time by 1 hour back or forward, if we had a night race rather than a day race, if we raced in Tokyo or Cape Town, or what would that give our audience? And we do lots of scenario planning and models based on our TV data. So that data is one big facet. We do a similar thing with digital, where we do lots of work around, what content is working on digital, on our web site, on app, on our socials, what content isn't working, and we feed all that back to digital guys, and they can then plan their strategy off the back of that. We are doing lots of strategic sort of projects as well, where we are buying in, where we're doing kind of bespoke research projects. So we are doing survey work with research agencies to try and understand who are our fans, how do we grow fans, who are potential fans of the future, how does that differ by market. So we do lots of work around that. And then we use quite innovative things as well, like when you go to one of our races, we use something called Wi-Fi analytics, where we measure people by their mobile phone, where their mobile phone is setting off a signal. It gets picked up by sensors that we place around the circuit, and we can understand, Vincent, he arrived at, actually, we wouldn't know your name, sorry. We wouldn't know your name, your age or anything, because it's very...
IP number XX or...
Yeah.
Around there.
This mobile phone arrived at 9 a.m. and he left it, or he or she left at 6 p.m. And in the 8 hours that they were here, they went here, and here, whatever. We use this data quite a lot to understand how do we improve our events. So we have there's tons of data, tons of numbers, and our job as a team is to just understand how we provide that information to different people across the business, as well as kind of educating people, because I don't know organizations you've worked for before, but people generally, the everyday world is not data literate, right? We are in the industry, because that's the industry we work in, but I would say 90% of people outside of our industry, they haven't got a clue. They see a number and they take numbers, they pick numbers, they misquote numbers, they always say it wrong. Like Bernie Ecclestone at F1 used to say that they had 6 billion fans. This was not true. This was just a cumulative TV audience number he'd seen over a couple of years. I mean, but yeah, people are always misquoting, giving the wrong number. So that's our job, to educate and make sure numbers are being used properly, correctly, and people understand the narrative around numbers.
There's a lot there, but you try to make the numbers understandable. Do you make stories, like data stories for the sponsors, for who else?
Exactly, yeah. So we do lots of reporting for partners, but also lots of internal teams as well, right? So like the marketing team, they're going to go out and plan their strategy for season 10. So we'll go to them and we'll give them information around, well, these are your people who are your fans at the moment, but if you want to target these fans in Tokyo, these are the messages that they want to hear. So we'll give them that kind of insight. The problem is we have so much insight. It's about finding the right data for the right people. So we'll speak also to, the people who arrange the calendar. So again, they're planning now for next year's out, like season 10. They're planning for like 2025, 2026. So they're always looking ahead. So we'll give them the information they need to know around fans. We'll give the talent team, so they're booking celebrities to come to our race next year. They want to know which celebrities are going to drive fandom the most. So we'll give them information around data around celebrities and influencers. So our job
Make
is
sure
about
to get some TV time as well.
Exactly. So we're disseminating all this information the whole time to sponsors as well as lots of internal teams. Also, the most important people, the C-suite level of our business, right? Our investors, they want to know as well about how we're doing as a sport. So we're constantly reporting on how well we're doing in terms of our TV, digital,
how you're improving,
and how we're growing. Yeah.
So you told us last time as well in the event that you are measuring how long people on average are watching, and that it's a KPI for you.
Yeah.
Can you tell us something about that?
Yeah, again, that we can work all this out via the TV audience data. So we get a time spent metric, so we can understand. So the average Formula E viewer now watches for about 16 minutes, 15, 16 minutes.
Yeah.
When I joined 2 years ago, it was about 12 minutes. So we've increased the average viewership, which is really great. But we want to go further. We want to, our race is about 45 to 50 minutes. So the average person comes in for 15 minutes, then they leave. Formula One, for example, is 30 minutes is the average person, which their races are more than double our races often. So we are comparable with Formula One in terms of our engagement. So we're happy with that. It's definitely a key metric for us because the longer people watch, the more engaged they are. It helps us to grow engagement with our sport.
So what can you do to make them watch longer?
So we can improve the coverage. So we do lots of work around what is it that turns people off? Why do people only stay for 15 minutes? We do research. We do biometric testing where we have people wear a device on their hands and we measure when they're most engaged, when they're least engaged during a race. So we can say, actually, the reason why all these people switched off here was because we were showing too many replays, or they were bored of, we were showing an onboard camera of the leader and there was no battles going on and it was boring for them. Or there was a yellow flag. People got bored by the safety car. If we had shown them replays or we'd gone back and shown them something else, they may have stayed. So we work very closely with our broadcast team and they test with us lots of hypotheses. They come out and they say, right, we're thinking about doing this, putting more replays here or doing a split screen here. What would that do with the audience? And then we'll test that against our audience. And that helps us understand what would drive engagement, what would reduce engagement. And then we can feed that back to that team.
I think the split screen is also something you see more and more. I think there's a lot there. You can show different images and the viewer will just watch whatever is most interesting for him. Of course, maybe a live race, maybe something that just happened in the race, or maybe switch to a famous person, as you said before. I think it measures the sweat particles, you said.
Yeah, so it measures your skin response. So it's very small levels, right? If you are engaged, your skin tone changes, right? You either sweat if you're a really sweaty person who gets really excited, but even a very small change in your engagement level, you would droplets of water, which none of us would even see, droplets of sweat would come from your skin, and that will denote your engagement against the device that people wear.
So that's amazing. Do you feel like the data that you're using, because you're basically a company trying to improve the bond with your clients, do you see that the things that you are doing is also applicable for other industries and companies in general?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think obviously a lot of the research around understanding who your fans are and how to be great fans and perceptions, etc. I mean, that can be just very transferable to how do you grow customers, right? For us, fans equals customers. So I think this is key. I think, lots of people do events. So if you are a company that is running events, I think there's many things that that we do to measure the impact of those events, like the sensors that I talked about. For example, Sky, it's a TV business, but they did lots of, you go to any shopping centre in England and they have all these kind of like stands where they're trying to sell you Sky. Like, they could use those sensors on their displays to understand how many people walked past, how many people came up who were interested. So there's use cases across so many different industries. Conferences, I guess, as well. If people go to a conference, or you're a business that advertises at a conference, you can use sensors to understand, well, how many people attended, how many people had an opportunity to see your stand or your advertising or whatever. So there's lots of things we do, even though we're at sports events. Many companies also, they are using events or they're using occasions that we could measure that impact. Also, things like with the sweat analysis, the biometric work I talked about, you could do that for TV advertising. So if you are Sky and you have a brand new TV ad and you want to measure the impact of that ad, you could ask a group of people to wear that device in their hands, and you see the points in the ads they're most engaged and least engaged. The use case is endless, right? You can use it for everything. Like,
maybe you would need to recognize in facial expressions, because I think a lot of people already have a camera in the house that registers where they are looking, but it's also privacy maybe. But in general,
you can do that research. I've done some before where you essentially you see where people are, like the hotspots of an ad, or where people are looking, and it's really, really like great innovation, right? You play your ad and you can see like all the hotspots. So are people actually looking at the brand, or are they looking at I don't know if there's a really interesting thing on the ad. That you have some really great examples where people just are ignoring the brand, gets no one looking, and everyone's just looking at the really funny bit or the exciting bit of the ad. And it's, brands are using Sky. We use this a lot at Sky to measure our Sky Sports ads. So, we would do things like we would test different price points. So, if it was £8 a month, £10 a month, £15 a month, and you could then start seeing the kind of the engagement level when the price came on the screen, but also where people were looking. And when the price was more expensive, people were not looking at that expensive price as much. They were turned off by it. Whereas when it was lower, they were looking, and then their engagement level gone up, because it might be that, 3 months free, the word free, suddenly everyone's eyes are glued to the word free or something. So there's so many great cases where you can use research and data to help you tell your story and help you understand what works with customers and what doesn't work with customers.
Yeah, obviously the events can be better, where the people are lining up, where they're standing, even if you had enough toilets probably. But that's an obvious one. I guess also for every company that uses marketing onto how to better find who are your customers, you should use data for that. And also, how can you keep them in your website longer, or your web shop, or guide them to the right things? How can you let them buy more? I saw a speech from IKEA as well. They A/B test continuously with different images, images that people made from home, images that they make professionally, different coloring. There's so much to learn, and it also changes, right? Because things that we might like 10 years ago, we might not like 10 years from now, or it depends on who your audience is that you're trying to target. If only young people buy a certain product, you need to engage with them differently than the older things.
Yeah, I also think companies that test all this stuff, they are doing better than companies that don't, because back 10 years ago, it's often the marketing director would say, no, this is the route we take. And people would say, well, where's the evidence? He would say, I'm the boss, my decision, right? No evidence at all. And now all these big companies are spending lots of money on marketing, and they need to be accountable for every penny they spend. So they need proof that it works. And this is why our world is really key, because they use our world to give them the ammunition to prove their strategy.
To finalize, because we're running towards the end, everybody's already arriving to their job right now. How do you see the Formula E evolve? Do you maybe see that the Formula One and Formula E gets closer together, because they are complete different organizations, right?
Yeah, I mean, we have a exclusive deal with the FIA. We're the only electric single-seater series. We have exclusivity. So Formula One couldn't tomorrow say we are going electric, because they wouldn't have they couldn't be part of the FIA if they did that. So They're not going to do that. They can go hybrid like they are now or whatever, but they can't ever go fully electric. So yeah, they might one day need us to advance their own technology. It's people who get paid a lot more money than me who are going to make those decisions and decide what happens in the future. But yeah, who knows? You know, when 2035 comes along and every country is no longer making petrol or diesel cars, and the manufacturers, they want to sell their electric versions and they can't sell it via F1, maybe then F1 will have a chat with us. I don't know. I mean, it's a hypothetical thing that only a few people will be privy to that information. Probably not me. I'm probably not important enough. But I think we all have a view that in 10 years' time things could be very different.
And for sure, your fan base will be much bigger. You will understand them much better because you have even more data probably and better ways of processing it and telling the story to all of your sponsors. Well, I think the things that are that you're doing, I think that this is still a job and an industry that is in the beginning. It will evolve so much more. There will be so much more need for people like you, and I think all organizations will see that and start to adapt.
Well, thank you. Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining me. Is there any last thing that you want to share?
No, not really. I think we've put the world to rights and we talked a lot. So yeah, no, and just maybe try Formula E in season 10, which starts in January, and give it a go. And we do have a few Dutch drivers in there, so it could
good. Where do we watch it? Do you know?
Ziggo Sport.
Okay, just find the channel, and it's also in different weekends than the Formula One, right? So
yeah, I think there's 1 or 2 clashes over the year, but it's on Ziggo Sport. So if you have a look, see, it's normally on a Saturday afternoon. So it's on a different day. F1's normally Sunday, and we're on a Saturday.
If you cannot get enough of your sports, join Formula E as well. There's more sports out there, and they're completely eco-friendly, or they're trying to be. They're at least more eco-friendly than the Formula One, so that's great.
Exactly.
And they have more women, which is also good. Attract more of the world. Thank you so much to all the listeners and viewers. I would friendly like to ask you, please follow us, subscribe to our podcast in YouTube, in Spotify, and soon also in Apple Music, I would think. Thank you so much, and bye-bye.
Thank you.